The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, and Naomi watched the crystal pieces scatter like her illusions. She'd dropped it on purpose. Across the ballroom, her husband Jin-woo didn't even flinch. He was too busy whispering into some socialite's ear, his hand resting on the small of the woman's back. The same spot he used to touch Naomi when he still pretended to care. 3 hours. They'd been at this godforsaken party for 3 hours, and he'd spoken to her exactly twice. Once to criticize her dress, too bright, too attention-seeking, and once to tell her to stop laughing so loudly, you sound like a market vendor. Naomi Kim Baptiste. That's who she was now, legally. A hyphenated woman living a hyphenated life. Half Caribbean sunshine, half Korean winter. Except Jin-woo had been trying to erase the first half since their honeymoon ended. "Mrs. Kim, are you all right?" A server appeared with a dustpan, concern creasing his young face. "Never better, love." Naomi flashed him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just clumsy tonight." That was a lie. Naomi Baptiste had never been clumsy a day in her life. She'd grown up in Trinidad, dancing in carnival bands since she was 7, moving through crowds of thousands without stepping on a single toe. But Naomi Kim Baptiste? She was supposed to be clumsy, quiet, contained. A perfect porcelain doll in Jin-woo's collection of expensive things. The ballroom was a spectacle of old money and older secrets. Seoul's elite gathered here like vultures in designer suits, picking at business deals and reputations with equal fervor. Jin-woo's import-export business was an open secret. Everyone knew he ran one of the most powerful organized crime syndicates in East Asia, and everyone pretended not to know. That's how this world worked. Pretend, pretend, pretend. Naomi was so damn tired of pretending. She remembered the beginning, when Jin-woo had walked into that beach bar in Tobago where she was bartending. During her gap year, he'd been different then, or maybe he'd just been a better actor. He'd laughed at her jokes, encouraged her to tell stories in her full, unfiltered voice, said he loved how she lit up every room. 3 months of whirlwind romance, proposals under starlight, promises of a life where she could be herself forever. The first correction came 2 weeks after the wedding. "Darling, maybe lower your voice a bit? My associates' wives are more refined in their speech." She'd laughed it off, thought he was joking. He wasn't. Then it was her clothes. Too colorful, too revealing, too attention-seeking. Her music was too loud. Her dancing was too provocative. Her friendship with other men was too familiar. Her laughter was too free. Drop by drop, he drained the color from her life until she was living in grayscale. Tonight, watching him ignore her like she was furniture while he charmed everyone else. Something in Naomi's chest cracked wide open. Not her heart, that had been cracking for months. No, this was her spirit, and it wasn't breaking. It was breaking free. The DJ transitioned into a Latin beat, and Naomi felt it in her bones before her brain could process it. A bachata remix with Afrobeat undertones. Her body remembered what her mind had been trying to forget. She moved toward the dance floor without thinking, her hips already finding the rhythm. Let Jin-woo glare. Let his business partners clutch their pearls. Let them all watch. "Excuse me," a voice said beside her. "Would you like to dance?" Naomi turned and found herself looking at a man who didn't belong here. Everything about him was wrong for this crowd. His suit was clean but off the rack. His boots were practical instead of prestigious, and his smile was genuine instead of calculated. He was tall, with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands that spoke of actual work, not golf course handshakes. "You sure you want to dance with me?" Naomi asked, raising an eyebrow. "My husband might have your kneecaps broken." The man glanced across the room where Jin-woo was still entertaining his fan club. "Your husband doesn't seem to remember you're here, and I've never been good at following rules anyway. I'm Desmond, by the way. Desmond Reyes." "Naomi." She took his hand. "And you're either very brave or very stupid. My mother says both." His grin widened. Shall we? They stepped onto the floor, and Naomi let the music take her home. She started slow, a basic bachata step, testing the waters. Desmond matched her easily, his lead confident but not controlling. That's when she decided to stop holding back. Naomi rolled her hips, dropped low, came back up with a body wave that traveled from her ankles to her shoulders. The movement was pure Caribbean fire, the kind of dancing she'd done at family reunions and street parties, before she'd learned to make herself smaller. She spun away from Desmond, adding a little twerk that made his eyebrows shoot up in delighted surprise, then spun back in, their bodies moving in perfect sync despite having just met. The ballroom went quiet. Not the music that kept pounding, but the conversations died like someone had hit a mute button on the entire upper class of Seoul. Oh shit, Desmond laughed. I think we're causing a scandal. Good, Naomi said, adding another hip roll that would have made her grandmother proud. I'm so bored of being boring. She could feel Jinwoo's eyes burning into her back now. Finally, she had his attention. But for the first time in 18 months, she didn't care about having it. She was too busy remembering who the hell she used to be. Desmond was a revelation. He didn't try to control her movements or tone her down. When she got wild, he got wilder, matching her energy beat for beat. They moved like they'd been dancing together for years, like their bodies spoke the same language even though they just met. When she tweaked, bent over, hands on her knees, making her hips shake in rapid-fire pulses, half the room gasped and the other half pretended to look away while definitely still watching. You're going to give these people heart attacks, Desmond said, spinning her out and back in. They need the cardio. Naomi shot back, breathless and grinning so wide her face hurt. When was the last time she'd smiled like this? Really smiled. Not the tight-lipped thing Jinwoo had trained into her. The song ended and transitioned into something slower, but Naomi didn't care about the tempo. She was high on her own audacity, drunk on the feeling of taking up space again. Desmond pulled her close. Respectfully close, his hand on her waist instead of grabbing her like she was property. And they swayed together while the entire ballroom tried to pretend they weren't staring. Thank you, Naomi said quietly, meeting Desmond's eyes. They were kind eyes, brown and warm and completely free of judgment. I really needed that. Thank you, he replied. I haven't had that much fun since, well, probably since ever at one of these things. You don't seem like the fancy party type. I'm not. I own a farm outside the city. Only came because my distributor insisted. He's trying to break into the luxury market. Desmond shrugged. Honestly, I was planning to leave until I saw you drop that champagne glass like it owed you money. Naomi laughed. Her real laugh, loud and unrestrained. It did. Cost me my dignity to hold it while being ignored. Well, you got your dignity back on that dance floor, along with everyone's attention, including my husband's, Naomi said, glancing over Desmond's shoulder. Jinwoo was staring at her with an expression she hadn't seen in months. Hunger. Not the cruel kind he'd been showing lately, but the desperate, possessive kind from when they first met. Funny how that works. Ignore me for hours until someone else wants me. Classic, Desmond agreed. My ex-wife was like that. Didn't want me until I stopped chasing her. Before Naomi could respond, Jinwoo materialized beside them like a well-dressed demon. Naomi, we're leaving. We just got here, she said sweetly, not moving from Desmond's arms. Now. Jinwoo's voice was ice wrapped in silk. He looked at Desmond like he was trying to memorize his face for future violence. And you are Desmond Reyes. I own Reyes Agricultural Collective. Desmond extended his hand, which Jinwoo ignored. Your wife is an excellent dancer. My wife is coming with me. Jinwoo grabbed Naomi's arm. Not hard enough to bruise, he was too smart for that, but firm enough to make his point. Naomi looked down at his hand, then up at his face. For 18 months, she would have gone quietly, would have apologized to Desmond, smoothed things over, made herself small enough to fit through Jinwoo's anger without getting cut. Not tonight. Actually, she said, removing his hand from her arm with deliberate slowness. I think I'll stay a bit longer. You seem so busy with your friends. I'd hate to interrupt your evening. Jinwoo's jaw clenched. Around them, conversations were definitely not happening because everyone was too busy eavesdropping. Naomi, don't embarrass me. Embarrass you? She felt something like laughter bubbling up in her chest, dark and dangerous. Jinwoo, darling, you've been embarrassing me since we walked through those doors. I'm just balancing the scales. His eyes flashed with something that might have scared her once. We'll discuss this at home. Looking forward to it, she said, turning back to Desmond. Shall we dance some more? Desmond, to his credit, looked slightly terrified but nodded anyway. If the lady wants to dance, who am I to refuse? Jinwoo stood there for 3 heartbeats, clearly warring between making a scene and maintaining his image. Image 1, as it always did with him. Don't stay out too late, he said through gritted teeth, then walked away with his dignity barely intact. Naomi watched him go, felt the eyes of Seoul's elite boring into her back, and realized she didn't care. Not even a little bit. The invisible chains she'd been wearing for 18 months had just shattered on a dance floor in the middle of her husband's world, and she'd never felt more alive. So, Desmond said carefully, should I be worried about waking up without my kneecaps tomorrow? Probably, Naomi admitted. But tonight? Tonight I don't care. Dance with me again. Until they kick us out, he promised. And they did. They danced until Naomi's feet hurt in her expensive heels, until her carefully styled hair came loose, until she was sweating through her too bright dress and laughing so hard she could barely breathe. They danced until she remembered what joy felt like, what freedom tasted like, what it meant to take up space without apologizing for it. When she finally left the party at 2 in the morning, Desmond walked her to her car. Will you be okay? He asked, genuine concern in his voice. Honestly, I don't know. Naomi pulled out her phone, saw 17 missed calls from Jinwoo. But I know I'll never be okay if I keep living like I have been. So whatever happens next, it's better than that. For what it's worth, you seem like someone who lands on her feet. I used to be. She smiled at him, real and warm. Maybe I still am. We'll find out. Desmond pulled out a business card, slightly bent from being in his pocket all night. If you ever need a friend, or fresh vegetables, or a dance partner who won't try to control your every move. Naomi took the card, felt its simple weight in her hand. No embossing, no fancy title. Just a name and a number. Fresh vegetables sound good. The rest sounds even better. She drove home to Jinwoo's penthouse in Gangnam, her Real laugh still echoing in her ears. Desmond's card tucked in her purse like a secret promise. The city lights blurred past her windows, and for the first time in 18 months, Naomi felt like she was driving toward something instead of away from herself. When she opened the penthouse door, Jinwoo was waiting in the dark, a glass of whiskey in his hand and murder in his eyes. We need to talk, he said. Yes, Naomi agreed, closing the door behind her. We really do. Jinwoo's penthouse smelled like expensive leather and expensive lies. Naomi dropped her clutch on the entry table, kicked off her heels, and walked past her husband like he was part of the furniture. She needed to wash this night off her skin, needed a moment to think before whatever fight he was about to pick. Don't walk away from me, Jinwoo said, his voice dangerously calm. Or what? Naomi turned to face him, and she could see the shock flicker across his face. She'd never talked back like this, never questioned. You'll ignore me harder? Already mastered that one. Babe, you humiliated me tonight. He set down his glass with controlled precision. Everything Jinwoo did was controlled, his business, his image, his wife. Except tonight, one of those things had slipped his grip. Dancing like that with that nobody. Do you know how that looked? Like I was having fun? Naomi crossed her arms. Remember fun, Jinwoo? That thing we used to have before you decided to rewrite my entire personality. I've been refining you, he corrected, standing up. He was tall, imposing, used to people cowering when he moved. Naomi stayed planted. When I met you, you were rough around the edges. Beautiful, yes, but unpolished. I've given you everything. Status, wealth, access to a world you never would have seen bartending in Trinidad. And all it cost me was myself. Naomi laughed, but there was no humor in it. Great trade, Jinwoo. Really fantastic. His jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. I've only ever asked you to behave in a way that befits your position as my wife. Your position. Your wife. Your world. Naomi moved to pour herself a drink, whiskey, straight, the way she actually liked it instead of the champagne Jinwoo always ordered for her. Notice a pattern? Everything's about you. What about what I want? What you want? Jinwoo moved closer, and for the first time, Naomi saw something besides anger in his eyes. Fear. He was actually afraid of losing control. You want to twerk at business functions like you're at some beach party? You want to embarrass yourself and me in front of the most powerful people in Seoul. I want to breathe, Naomi said quietly, the word coming out raw. I want to laugh without being told it's too loud. I want to wear colors that make me happy. I want to dance like my body belongs to me and not to your image. I want to be Naomi, not this plastic version you've been sculpting. Jinwoo stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. Maybe she was. The language of autonomy probably sounded foreign in his world of control and possession. I love you, he said finally, and Naomi almost felt sorry for him. He probably believed it. Everything I've done has been because I love you. No, Jinwoo, you loved the idea of having me, like a rare painting or a vintage car. Something exotic and beautiful to show off when it suited you and hide away when it didn't. Naomi took a sip of whiskey, let it burn down her throat. That's not love. That's collection. I gave you everything. You gave me everything except permission to be myself. The words exploded out of her. 18 months of swallowed frustration finally erupting. Do you know what that feels like? To look in the mirror and not recognize the person looking back? To bite your tongue so often you forget what your real voice sounds like. Jinwoo's expression shifted, and Naomi recognized the look. He was done trying to reason. Now he was moving to threats. You signed a prenup, Naomi. You leave with nothing. I came here with nothing, she reminded him. I can leave with nothing just fine. At least I'll leave with myself. You think that farmer wants you? Jinwoo sneered. He's nobody. He can't give you what I can. Maybe that's exactly why he appeals to me, because he doesn't give me anything except space to be myself. You know what he did tonight? He danced with me. That's it. Didn't try to fix me, didn't correct me, didn't treat me like a doll that might break. Just danced. Jinwoo moved fast, grabbing her arm. Harder than at the party, hard enough to leave marks. You belong to me. Naomi looked at his hand, then at his face and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Try that again, and I'll break your wrist. 16 years of carnival dancing means I'm stronger than I look. Baby, don't test me. He let go, shocked. The Naomi he'd molded never threatened violence. But the Naomi he'd married? That woman had grown up with 3 older brothers who taught her to throw punches before she could throw shade. Who are you? Jinwoo asked, and he genuinely seemed confused. I'm the woman you fell in love with, Naomi said softly. The one you've been trying to erase for a year and a half. Congratulations, you almost succeeded. Almost. She walked to their bedroom, his bedroom now, really, and started pulling out a suitcase. Jinwoo followed, watching in disbelief as she began packing. Where will you go? he demanded. You don't know anyone here. You have no money of your own. You're in a foreign country. I'll figure it out. Naomi grabbed her passport from the bedside drawer. Jinwoo had kept it safe for her, which really meant kept it as insurance she couldn't leave easily. I always do. Naomi, stop. His voice cracked, just slightly. Please, we can work this out. I'll try to be better. I'll let you dress how you want, dance how you want. Let me. She turned to face him fully. Jinwoo, that's the whole problem right there. I don't need your permission to exist. I shouldn't need to earn the right to be myself in my own marriage. I can change, he said, and now he was begging. The mighty Jinwoo Kim, begging. It would have been satisfying if it wasn't so sad. Give me another chance. I'll prove it to you. You've had 18 months of chances. Naomi zipped up her suitcase. Every time I tried to be myself and you shut me down, that was a chance. Every time I laughed too loud and you gave me that look, chance. Every time I wanted to call my family and you said it wasn't a good time, another chance gone. 1 month, Jinwoo negotiated because that's what he did, negotiate, manipulate, control. Stay for 1 month. Let me show you I can be the man you need. Naomi considered it for about 3 seconds. Then she remembered Desmond's easy smile, the freedom of that dance floor, the feeling of her own hips moving to her own rhythm. No. She walked out of the bedroom, out of the penthouse, out of her marriage with 1 suitcase and her passport. Jinwoo didn't follow. She'd stripped him of his power, and he didn't know how to function without it. The night air hit her face like absolution. Naomi stood on the street in Gangnam at 3 in the morning. A woman with nowhere to go and somehow lighter than she'd felt in months. She pulled out Desmond's card, stared at it in the streetlight. Too desperate to call him now. Way too soon. But she had enough money for a hotel room for a few nights. After that, she'd figure it out. That's what Caribbean women did, they figured shit out. 3 days later, Naomi was staying in a modest hotel in Itaewon, surviving on her emergency credit card and trying to figure out her next move. She'd called her mother, endured the I told you so lecture. Her family had never trusted Jinwoo, and was researching teaching English as a way to support herself when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mrs. Kim. This is Han-Wool Park, Mr. Kim's attorney. The voice was professional, cold. We need to discuss the terms of your departure. Here it came. The punishment. Jinwoo wasn't the type to let anything go, especially not his pride. I'm listening, Naomi said carefully. Mr. Kim is prepared to honor a generous settlement despite the prenuptial agreement, provided you sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the nature of his business affairs and your marriage. Naomi almost laughed. He's paying me to stay quiet? He's offering you financial security in exchange for discretion. How much? The number Han-Wool quoted made Naomi sit down hard on the hotel bed. It was enough to live comfortably for years, maybe start a business, definitely get home to Trinidad and set up a new life. And all I have to do is never talk about Jinwoo's work or our marriage? Correct. You would also agree to leave Korea within 30 days and not return for a minimum of 5 years. Exile. He was buying her silence and her absence, making sure she could never embarrass him again, never dance with strangers at parties, never exist in his world to remind him of his failure to control her. Can I think about it? Naomi asked. You have 48 hours. After Han-Wool hung up, Naomi sat in her hotel room and thought about money versus pride, security versus freedom, leaving versus staying. She thought about Jinwoo's face when she'd walked out, thought about Desmond's card still in her wallet, thought about the woman she'd seen in the mirror that night after dancing, wild-haired, bright-eyed, finally recognizable. She called Desmond. Hello. He sounded surprised, pleased. Hey, it's Naomi. From the party, the scandalous dancing. I remember. She could hear his smile through the phone. How are you? Still married to the scary crime boss. Separated, actually. It's a whole thing. Naomi took a breath. This is going to sound weird, but do you want to grab coffee? I could use a friendly face and some advice from someone who doesn't have an agenda. I'm in the city tomorrow for a delivery. There's a great cafe in Hongdae, Cafe Onion, 1 p.m. I'll be there, Naomi promised. She showed up 15 minutes early because punctuality was one thing Jinwoo hadn't ruined for her. Desmond arrived exactly on time, looking completely out of place among the artistic university students in his practical farming clothes and sun-weathered skin. You came, he said, grinning like he'd half expected her to stand him up. I said I would. Naomi stood to greet him, and before she could think about it, hugged him. He smelled like soil and sunshine, nothing like Jinwoo's expensive cologne. Thanks for meeting me. They ordered coffee and settled into a corner table. Naomi found herself telling him everything: the settlement offer, the NDA, the choice between money and staying in Korea, between security and the possibility of building something real on her own terms. What do you want to do? Desmond asked when she finished. Honestly, I want to tell Jinwoo to shove his settlement money where the sun doesn't shine. Naomi stirred her cappuccino absently. But that's pride talking. The smart thing is probably to take the money and run. Why? Because I have no job, no support system here, no real plan. Taking his money means I can start over properly. Go home. See my family. Figure out my next chapter without struggling. Desmond nodded thoughtfully. Okay, now tell me what your gut says, not your practical brain. Naomi closed her eyes, listened to herself. Really listened. For the first time in months. My gut says if I take his money and leave, he wins. Not the marriage, but the last word. He gets to pay me off like I'm another business problem he solved. Neat, clean, controlled. Even my exit becomes part of his narrative. And if I stay, I have to build a life from scratch in a country where I barely speak the language and have no qualifications to do anything except bartend and dance. She opened her eyes, met Desmond's steady gaze. But it would be my life, my choice, my terms. For what it's worth, Desmond said slowly, I could use help at the farm. It's nothing glamorous: farmers markets, crop planning, some social media marketing for the collective. The pay is terrible, the hours are long, and you'd smell like compost half the time. Naomi stared at him. Are you seriously offering me a job? I'm offering you an option that isn't either or. Take his settlement money, you earned it dealing with that asshole for 18 months. But don't leave Korea. Stay, work for me for a while, build your own thing. When you're ready to go home, go. But make it your choice, not his exile. It was crazy. It was possibly the most impractical thing anyone had ever suggested. Naomi felt a grin spreading across her face. That's actually brilliant in a completely insane way. I have my moments. Desmond smiled back. Plus, I really do need help. My social media is basically pictures of vegetables with captions like, "Good tomato." I'm told this is not engaging content. Naomi laughed, and it felt like medicine. Okay, yes, let's do this completely ridiculous thing. She called Hanwol that afternoon and accepted the settlement with one modification. She wouldn't agree to leave Korea. They could keep their 5-year exile clause out. Jinwoo's lawyer sputtered about negotiation and terms, but Naomi held firm. She'd take the money as compensation for 18 months of emotional manipulation, but she wouldn't let Jinwoo dictate where she lived. Surprisingly, Jinwoo agreed. Maybe he thought she'd leave anyway once the novelty wore off. Maybe he just wanted the whole thing finished. Either way, Naomi walked away with enough money to breathe and enough freedom to build. 2 weeks later, she was living in a small apartment in Yangpyeong, waking up before dawn to help Desmond with market prep, learning about heritage vegetables and sustainable farming practices, and laughing more than she had in years. Jinwoo called once, 3 weeks after she'd moved. You're really doing this? Playing farmer. I'm really doing this, Naomi confirmed. dirt under her nails and satisfaction in her voice. When you get bored, when you realize what you gave up, I'll throw a party, she interrupted, because I'll never be as bored as I was being your perfect wife. Lose my number, Jean Woo. She hung up and blocked him, feeling lighter with each deletion. Living with Desmond, well, near him, she had her own place, was nothing like being married to Jean Woo. Desmond didn't try to change her, didn't correct her laugh or her clothes or her opinions. When she wanted to blast soca while doing market prep, he joined in. When she tried to cook Caribbean food and accidentally made everything too spicy for Korean customers, he just laughed and ate it himself. You're going to burn your tongue off, she warned as he downed his third plate of jerk-seasoned vegetables. Worth it, he gasped, reaching for more water. This is amazing. Painful but amazing. They fell into an easy rhythm: work, friendship, the occasional beer after long market days. Naomi started a social media account for the farm that actually showed personality, mixing farming content with Caribbean music and videos of her dancing in the fields. It sounds ridiculous, but people loved it. Sales jumped. Desmond's collective started getting orders from high-end restaurants. You're a marketing genius, Desmond said, watching their follower count climb. I'm just being myself, Naomi corrected. Turns out that's pretty marketable when someone isn't trying to sand off all my edges. 3 months in, after a particularly good market day, they celebrated with soju and stargazing from Desmond's porch. Naomi was telling a story about her brothers back home, gesturing wildly with her drink, when she noticed Desmond watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. Nothing. You're really something, you know that? Something good or something concerning? Something extraordinary. He said it simply, like it was an obvious fact. The way you laugh, the way you move through the world like you're dancing even when you're standing still. The way you turned your entire life upside down and landed on your feet. It's extraordinary. Naomi felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. Desmond. I know it's too soon, he said quickly. I know you're still figuring stuff out, getting over Jean Woo, all of that. I'm not trying to complicate things. I just wanted you to know that you're seen. Really seen. The real you, not some edited version. Thank you, Naomi said softly. And because she was Naomi Baptiste and had never been good at leaving things unsaid. For the record, I see you too. And I really like what I see. They didn't kiss that night. Didn't rush into anything. Just sat together under the stars, letting something real and gentle grow between them like the vegetables they tended, patient, organic, given space to develop roots. But Naomi went home to her apartment with Desmond's words warming her chest. And for the first time since leaving Jean Woo, she thought about what it might mean to fall in love again. Actually in love, not whatever twisted thing she'd had before. Maybe, she thought, falling asleep to the sound of crickets instead of city traffic. Maybe this was what it felt like when love didn't require you to shrink. 6 months into her new life, Naomi woke up laughing. She was in Desmond's bed. Their bed, really, since she'd been spending more nights at the farmhouse than her own apartment. And he was attempting to make pancakes shaped like vegetables. Is that supposed to be a carrot? She asked, squinting at the orange blob on the griddle. It's abstract, Desmond defended, flipping it with more confidence than skill. You're supposed to feel the essence of carrot, not see it literally. Baby, the only thing I'm feeling is concern for our breakfast. Naomi got out of bed, wearing one of his shirts and her own comfort, and took over the spatula. Move. Let a Trinidad woman show you how it's done. They'd been dancing around their feelings for months before finally admitting what everyone else already knew. They were falling in love, but it had been slow, natural, nothing like Jean Woo's love-bombing intensity. Desmond courted her with patience, with respect for her healing process, with space to be herself. Their first kiss happened 4 months in, after a particularly successful farmer's market, and it was gentle and sweet and nothing like the passionate, possessive way Jinwoo used to claim her mouth. Their first time making love came a month after that, and it was revelatory. Jinwoo had been technically skilled but emotionally disconnected, treating sex like another performance where Naomi had to hit certain marks. With Desmond, it was conversation. Bodies asking questions and answering, learning each other's rhythms, laughing when something didn't work, celebrating when it did. "You're beautiful," Desmond had whispered that first night, trailing kisses down her spine. "You're biased," Naomi had replied, but she'd felt beautiful, seen, cherished. "Definitely biased," he'd agreed, grinning against her skin. "But also correct." He'd taken his time, learning what made her gasp, what made her laugh, what made her grab his hair and demand more. And when they finally came together, felt like harmony instead of conquest. Afterward, they'd laid tangled in each other, talking about everything and nothing until dawn. Now, 6 months in, they had rhythm. Desmond knew Naomi liked her coffee with coconut milk and morning sex that was slow and sleepy. Naomi knew Desmond needed absolute silence for the first 30 minutes after waking up, and that he expressed love through actions more than words. Fixing things she mentioned were broken, remembering her favorite fruits, leaving notes in her work bag. "Pancakes are ready," Naomi announced, sliding perfectly golden discs onto plates. "See, this is how you do it." "Show off," Desmond said fondly, kissing her temple. "Some of us aren't culinary geniuses. You grow the food, cook it, perfect division of labor." They ate breakfast on the porch, watching the sun climb over Desmond's fields. The farm had become home in a way Jinwoo's penthouse never had. Here, Naomi could blast her music, dance in the dirt, laugh as loudly as she wanted. She'd built a small online following doing exactly that, posting videos of herself working the farm in cutoff shorts and crop tops, dancing while harvesting, teaching Caribbean cooking with Korean vegetables. The comments were mostly positive, but occasionally someone would recognize her as Jinwoo Kim's ex-wife, and the speculation would start. Was she downgrading? Did she regret leaving? Was this farmer really better than one of Seoul's most powerful men? Naomi ignored it all. Let them speculate. She knew her truth. "I have a delivery in Seoul today," Desmond said, finishing his coffee. "Want to come? We could grab dinner after, maybe see that movie you mentioned." "Can't. I'm doing that cooking demonstration at the community center." Naomi had started teaching Caribbean cooking to local women, creating community in her adopted home. "But dinner and a movie tomorrow? It's a date." Desmond stood, pulled her up, wrapped his arms around her waist. "I love you, you know." "I know." Naomi kissed him. "I love you too." She still marveled at how easy it was to say with Desmond, how uncomplicated love could be when it wasn't wrapped in control and conditions. Desmond left for Seoul, and Naomi spent the morning prepping for her class. Marinating chicken, chopping vegetables, mixing spices. She was arranging ingredients when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello, Naomi." Jinwoo's voice was smooth, controlled. She hadn't heard it in 6 months. "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't think we do. I said everything I needed to say. It's about your boyfriend." The way he said boyfriend dripped with contempt. "Desmond Reyes. Did you know he's been negotiating with my business partners? Trying to expand his distribution into markets I control." Naomi's grip tightened on the phone. "So what? It's a free market, Jinwoo. You don't own every restaurant in Seoul." "No, but I have influence. Considerable influence." His voice turned silky, dangerous. "One word from me, and Desmond's contracts disappear. His collective fails. All those farmers depending on him, gone. Is that really what you want? Are you threatening him?" Naomi's voice went cold. "Because if you are, I'm offering you a choice. Come back. Not as my wife, I'm not delusional. but as my companion. Public appearances, business functions. Play the part you were supposed to play, and I'll make sure Desmond's business thrives. I'll even invest in it. Refuse, and I'll destroy everything he's built. Naomi felt sick. This was Jinwoo's specialty. Finding what people loved and using it as leverage. Why? Why do this? You have the settlement money back, you have your reputation. Why can't you just let me go? Because you're mine, Jinwoo said simply. You walked away from me, Naomi. No one walks away from me, but I'm willing to be reasonable. 6 months. Appear with me at events. Smile for cameras, help me rebuild my image. After that, I'll let you go back to your farmer. Think of it as paying off a debt. I don't owe you shit, Naomi spat. Maybe not. But does Desmond deserve to lose everything because you wanted to play house in the countryside? Jinwoo paused, letting his words sink in. You have 48 hours to decide. I'll be in touch. He hung up, leaving Naomi shaking with rage and fear. She wanted to call Desmond immediately, warn him, but what would she say? That her ex-husband was threatening his business because she dared to move on? That Jinwoo was using the man she loved as a bargaining chip? Naomi spent the day in a fog, barely present for her cooking class, her mind running through scenarios. She could go back to Jinwoo, protect Desmond, sacrifice 6 more months of her freedom. Or she could refuse, risk everything Desmond had built, condemn all those farmers to failure because of her choices. By the time Desmond got home that evening, Naomi had decided. She couldn't tell him. He'd never accept Jinwoo's deal if he knew. Would rather see his business fail than see her trapped. But Naomi had spent 18 months learning to be strategic, learning to think 10 steps ahead. She had a different plan. Hey, you okay? Desmond asked, noticing her tension. You seem off. Just tired. Naomi lied, hating herself for it. Long day. Tell me about Seoul. While Desmond talked about his deliveries and new contracts, Naomi was mentally cataloging everything she knew about Jinwoo's business. Every illegal deal she'd overheard, every money laundering scheme she'd pieced together during her marriage. She'd signed an NDA, sure, but there were ways around that. Anonymous tips. Journalists who'd been trying to expose Jinwoo for years. If Jinwoo wanted to play dirty, Naomi would show him just how much she'd learned in their marriage. The next morning, while Desmond was in the fields, Naomi made a call to a journalist. She'd read about Mineseo Jung, known for investigating organized crime. Ms. Jung, my name is Naomi Baptiste. I used to be married to Jinwoo Kim, and I have information you might find interesting. They met in a quiet cafe in Itaewon. Mineseo was sharp-eyed and skeptical until Naomi started talking, detailing shell companies and offshore accounts, naming names and dates with the precision of someone who'd been paying attention even when they were supposed to be decorative. This is extensive, Mineseo said, her recorder running. But you signed an NDA. He could sue you into oblivion. Only if he can prove I was the source. Naomi smiled. And I'm betting he'll be too busy dealing with criminal investigations to worry about civil suits. Besides, I'm willing to risk it. He threatened someone I love. I'm done being afraid of him. You know he'll retaliate, Mineseo warned. Let him try. Naomi's voice was steel wrapped in sugar. I'm a Caribbean woman, Ms. Jung. We don't scare easy, and we don't forget when someone threatens our family. Jinwoo is about to learn that the hard way. Over the next week, Naomi gave Mineseo everything. Documents she'd photographed during her marriage, conversations she'd memorized, connections she'd mapped. She did it carefully, strategically, making sure nothing could be traced directly back to her. Jinwoo called on the 48th hour, exactly as promised. Have you made your decision? He asked. I have, Naomi said calmly. You can take your offer and shove it directly up your ass. And if you touch Desmond's business, if you so much as look at him wrong, I will make you regret it. Big talk from someone with no power. Jinwoo laughed. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you, Naomi replied. But you're about to find out. She hung up and waited. The article dropped 3 days later. The Kim Empire, a network of corruption and violence, splashed across every major news outlet in Korea. Min Seo had done her job beautifully, corroborating Naomi's information with independent sources, building an airtight case. Jin Woo's world imploded. Police raids, frozen accounts, business partners fleeing. His carefully constructed empire cracking under the weight of exposure. He called Naomi once, screaming about betrayal and consequences. She let him rage, then said quietly, "I told you, you should have just let me go." The investigation would take months, probably years. Jinwoo would lawyer up, fight back, maybe even walk away with minimal damage. Men like him usually did. But his reputation was destroyed. His power diminished, and everyone knew he'd been taken down by the wife he'd tried to control. Naomi's involvement stayed mostly hidden. Min Seo protected her sources, and while Jinwoo suspected, he couldn't prove anything. The NDA became meaningless once criminal investigations started. Legal privilege didn't cover crime. "I saw the news," Desmond said one evening, pulling Naomi close. They were in their bedroom, darkness wrapping around them like safety. "About Jinwoo, the article. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy," Naomi said lightly. "Naomi." Desmond turned her to face him. Were you involved?" She could lie. Should lie, probably. But this was Desmond, and she was done with dishonesty. "He threatened you. Threatened your business, all those farmers. Said he'd destroy everything you built if I didn't come back to him. So you destroyed him first." "I protected what's mine," Naomi corrected. This life we're building. I'm not sorry." Desmond was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing, deep and genuine. "Remind me never to piss you off." "Smart man." Naomi kissed him, relieved. "You're not mad." "Mad? I'm in awe. And maybe a little terrified. But mostly in awe." He pulled her closer. "You're incredible. You know that?" "I know," she said, grinning. "But feel free to keep telling me." They made love that night. With a new intensity, celebrating survival and victory and the death of old chains. Desmond took his time, worshipping every inch of her skin, whispering how strong she was, how brave, how absolutely magnificent. When he finally pushed inside her, Naomi felt complete in a way she never had with Jinwoo. Two equals choosing each other, again and again. Afterward, tangled in sheets and each other, Desmond said, "Move in with me, officially. Not just staying over most nights, but actually living here. Make this yours too." "I thought this was already ours," Naomi said, but her heart was soaring. "It is, but I want to make it official. I want to wake up with you every morning, go to sleep with you every night. I want to build this life together properly. What do you say?" "I say yes," Naomi replied, kissing him between words. "Yes, yes, yes." 3 months later, Jinwoo was awaiting trial and Naomi was fully moved into the farmhouse. Her bright colors and loud music transforming the space into something that felt like home. She'd expanded her cooking classes, started a YouTube channel, and was in talks with a publisher about a cookbook combining Caribbean and Korean cuisines. Desmond's business was thriving, ironically boosted by the publicity around Jinwoo's fall. Everyone wanted vegetables from that farm where Jinwoo Kim's ex-wife works. They'd hired 3 more people, expanded their crop varieties, and were now supplying half the high-end restaurants in Seoul. "We should celebrate," Desmond said one evening, after signing a particularly lucrative contract. "I'm always down to celebrate." Naomi was chopping vegetables for dinner, dancing to a soca remix. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, there's this party in Seoul next weekend. One of my distributors is hosting. Very fancy, lots of important people." He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "Wanna be my date? Show them how it's done." Naomi turned in his arms, grinning. "A fancy party? With dancing? Where I used to get in trouble for being myself. Where you can now be as loud and colorful and magnificent as you want," Desmond corrected. "And I'll be right there with you, matching your energy." "Then absolutely yes." She kissed him. "Let's show Seoul what real love looks like." The party was everything Naomi remembered from her Jinwoo days. Expensive, pretentious, full of people who valued appearances over substance. But this time, she walked in as herself, in a bright yellow dress that would have given Jinwoo a heart attack. Her natural hair in beautiful curls, her laugh unrestricted. And when the music started, Desmond took her hand and they danced. Really danced, not the controlled swaying Jinwoo had preferred. They moved together like they did everything else, in perfect synchronization born from actually knowing each other, actually listening, actually caring. People stared, just like they had that first night. But this time, Naomi wasn't making a statement. She was just living her life, loving her partner, being fully, completely herself. Later, on the drive home, Desmond said, "You know what I love most about you? My incredible cooking skills?" Naomi teased. "Besides that, is how you never shrink. Even when Jinwoo tried to make you smaller, even when it would have been easier to just comply, you stayed big, loud, colorful, yourself." He glanced at her, love clear in his eyes. "You taught me something important, that real love doesn't ask you to diminish. It celebrates every bit of you, even the parts that don't fit easily into boxes." Naomi felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, happy tears. "You taught me something too, that I deserve that kind of love, that I'm worth showing up fully for." They drove back to their farm, to their life, to their beautiful, messy, completely authentic love. And when they made love that night, slow and sweet and punctuated with laughter, Naomi thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago. Lost, shrinking, forgetting herself piece by piece. She'd never be that woman again. Jinwoo had tried to collect her, control her, contain her. But Naomi Baptiste was uncollectible, uncontrollable, and absolutely uncontainable. She was Caribbean sunshine in Korean soil, and she was thriving exactly as she was meant to, wild, free, and completely unapologetically herself. And she'd never tasted freedom sweeter than this. Waking up next to a man who loved her chaos, working land that fed her soul, living a life that was entirely, authentically hers. Jinwoo might have love-bombed her into marriage, but Desmond had truth-bombed her into real love. The kind that didn't need to manipulate or control. The kind that just was. That night, wrapped in Desmond's arms, Naomi finally understood what she'd been searching for all along. Not someone to complete her, but someone who celebrated her completeness. Not someone to give her the world, but someone to build a world with. And as she drifted off to sleep, the sounds of the countryside replacing city traffic, Desmond's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Naomi smiled. She'd danced her way out of one life and into another, and she'd never stop dancing again. 2 years later, Naomi stood in the kitchen of what they now called the Baptiste Reyes Culinary Farm, watching her mother critique Desmond's knife skills with the brutal honesty only a Trini mother could deliver. "Boy, you chopping that plantain like you vex with it," Marcia Baptiste said, her accent thick as ever. "Gentle, nah? It not your enemy." "Yes, ma'am," Desmond replied, adjusting his technique while trying not to laugh. He'd learned quickly that arguing with Naomi's mother was a losing battle. "And you," Marcia turned to her daughter, "when you telling me about grandbabies? I not getting younger, you know? Mama, we just got married 6 months ago." Naomi protested, but she was grinning. Her mother had flown in for a month to help with the grand opening of their new venture. A farm-to-table restaurant and cooking school that blended Caribbean and Korean cuisines. 6 months plenty long enough to get started, Marcia insisted. Your father and I had me 3 months after the wedding. I know, you tell the story every time. Naomi hugged her mother from behind. We're working on it, okay? When it happens, it happens. The truth was they'd been talking about it. About tiny humans with Desmond's kind eyes and Naomi's wild spirit, running through the fields, growing up knowing they could be exactly who they were. But for now, they were building their empire, the kind built on joy instead of control, on community instead of power. The restaurant's opening night was chaos in the best way. Every table packed, the kitchen humming with energy. Naomi's cooking students serving dishes they'd learned to make. Desmond's farmers bringing in fresh produce by the basket. The menu was audacious: Korean barbecue with Caribbean marinades, roti filled with bulgogi, planting kimchi that somehow worked perfectly. This is insane, their head chef G1 said, checking the reservation list. We're booked solid for the next 3 months. That's what happens when you let Naomi handle marketing, Desmond said proudly. His wife's social media presence had exploded over the past 2 years. Cooking videos, farm tours, dance breaks in the fields. She'd become something of a celebrity. The woman who'd walked away from wealth to find herself in the soil. Around 9 p.m., during the dinner rush, someone Naomi hadn't expected walked through the door. Minasio Jung, the journalist, with a man Naomi vaguely recognized from news coverage. Naomi, Minasio waved, approaching with a smile. I hope you don't mind us crashing your opening. This is Prosecutor Kang De-young. He wanted to meet you. Naomi's stomach flipped. The prosecution. Jinwoo's trial was still ongoing. Appeals and delays dragging it out. Is everything okay? More than okay, Prosecutor Kang said, shaking her hand. I wanted to thank you personally. The information you provided Ms. Jung led to one of the largest organized crime convictions in recent history. Jinwoo Kim was sentenced this morning. 15 years. No parole eligibility for 10. The kitchen seemed to tilt. 15 years. Jinwoo, who'd controlled everything, would spend the next decade and a half in a cell where he controlled nothing. Naomi didn't know what to feel. Relief, vindication, sadness for the man he could have been if he'd chosen differently. Desmond appeared at her side, hand on her lower back. You okay? Yeah, she said slowly, then with more certainty. Yeah, I am. I really am. They gave Minasio and the prosecutor the best table in the house, on the house. Later, after the dinner rush calmed, Naomi stepped outside for air. The farm stretched before her, bathed in moonlight, peaceful and abundant. Penny for your thoughts? Desmond joined her, wrapping a jacket around her shoulders. I was just thinking about that night. The party, the dancing, how everything changed. Naomi leaned into him. If someone had told me then that I'd end up here, running a restaurant, married to a farmer, genuinely happy.
Well, besties, in this story we learned that never shrink yourself to fit into someone else's vision of what you should be. The right love will celebrate you at full volume, loud laugh, wild dancing, and all. And when someone tries to dim your light, remember you are not a dimmer switch. You are the whole damn sun, besties. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share.